We start 1973 with a sense of deja vu, because this is almost the same story as Spectacular Spider-Man magazine issue 1, panel for panel, but in colour this time. So there's a billboard telling everyone to vote for Richard Riley, and then a 10-foot man smashes through it. Apparently he hates this Riley fellow, and so Spider-Man fights the big guy, who calls himself Smasher, and saves some civilians from falling debris and from falling. Except this time he has holes in his mask because of previous events. Then something new happens, as Spider-Man swings into the Bugle to snatch back his mask, as Jonah raves about Riley and his tough-on-crime attitude. And then, after getting a button from MJ supporting Richard Riley, he goes back to the Bugle as Peter Parker, to sell photographs of his fight with Doc Ock and Hammerhead, which is mostly what happened last time, except that time he wanted money. His sales pitch is interrupted by news of the Smasher, and Riley goes on television to talk about how the underworld has declared war on him, a war on law and order, and how he's the man to tackle rising crime. And when a mobster approaches him afterwards, Riley grabs him, calls him vermin, and tells him that he'll never escape his vengeance. You know, normal politician stuff. Later, Spider-Man is swinging around looking for the Smasher. With his luck turning up dry, he decides to see Gwen, who he is worried he has lost to Flash. But of course he hasn't. Gwen is waiting at home, feeling guilty for how she spoke to Aunt May, and when he asks her if there's anything between her and Flash, she denies it, saying they're only friends, and embraces Peter. Then, like the original story, Peter takes Gwen to a Richard Riley rally, where they meet up with MJ, who is besotted with Riley. The man has style. After J. Jonah Jameson gives a big speech, Peter's spider sense goes off. It's the ceiling, cracking and ready to fall on the crowd. Peter excuses himself, blaming his stomach ulcer this time, and sneaks away to a fuse box to plunge the room into darkness. Then, without his Spider-Man costume, he climbs up a wall and secures the ceiling with webbing, but it doesn't look like it'll be strong enough to hold, and someone in the audience has spotted this strange man on the ceiling, and is looking for a flashlight. After the last issue of Marvel Team Up, Spider-Man has the Puppet Master unconscious in the Baxter building when the Thing walks in. Spidey explains the whole situation and the Thing believes him and wakes the villain up. When the Puppet Master talks, Ben Grimm's girlfriend, the blind Alicia Masters, recognises the voice and reveals that he's her stepfather. So, to spare her any pain, the Thing drags the Puppet Master away to beat him up, before returning with some information that he has learned. Alicia's blindness may not be permanent. So they take the Fantastic Car out to Pennsylvania, and on the way the Puppet Master explains his story. How he was working with a friend called Jacob Reese on radioactive clay, but was jealous of Jacob's wife and daughter. He was so overcome with jealousy that he went to sabotage their experiment, and when Jacob caught him doing it, the Puppet Master killed him, throwing him into the radioactive clay. This caused an explosion, and Jacob's wife and daughter were outside and were caught in it. His wife was merely knocked out, but his daughter, Alicia, was blinded by the clay. And because it looked like an accident, no one knew that the Puppet Master killed Jacob, and he was married to Jacob's wife a year later, until her death drove him to use his science to control people. With his story told, they land at their destination, and they leave Alicia in the Fantastic Car while Ben, Spidey and the Puppet Master head to that lab, long destroyed. Except that it's not destroyed, and our heroes learn the hard way when a gun pops up and shoots at them both while the Puppet Master dives down and into a hatch in the ground. He knew that this would happen and he has betrayed them. The hatch seals behind him, but that doesn't stop the Thing for long, and he simply smashes it. Spider-Man follows him into the underground base in search of the Puppet Master, with the two heroes splitting up to cover more ground. As they search, the Puppet Master is meeting with the Mad Thinker, who is disappointed that the Puppet Master has brought heroes into the lab that he had given to the Thinker. But the Puppet Master suggests that it's a boon instead, that he now has the heroes right where he wants them. And so the Thinker activates traps, making the walls so slippery that Spidey falls towards his death, and trapping Ben Grimm in a room without oxygen. But when the Thinker orders a robot to capture Alicia and she screams in fear, the Puppet Master tells the Thinker to stop, and when the Thinker refuses, the Puppet Master grabs a steel pipe, hoping to knock the Thinker out. However, he's too weak to do it, but thankfully Spider-Man helps him along with some webbing. Spidey had escaped his trap by bouncing off the walls to slow his fall, and the robot that looms over Alicia is defeated by the Thing, wielding a tree. He'd escaped his trap by just punching the walls a lot of times. And so the villains are defeated and the heroes are safe, but before they can go back into the lab, it explodes. It seems that the Puppet Master had felt such guilt inside him that he has discovered he can no longer live with it. Then we're back on the ceiling in the dark as Peter Parker is desperately trying to save the lives of the people he already saved the last time this story was told. And he manages it, keeping the ceiling held while people escape, and so they're gone when a large piece falls to the ground. It seems that someone has sabotaged the ceiling, that maybe Richard Riley isn't as popular as they thought. To get away without people seeing his identity, Peter creates a web shield and escapes. But now people blame Spider-Man for the attack. But Riley is not scared of these attacks on law and order, and he rants on the news about how he will continue to fight as Peter emerges from the crowd and walks Gwen and MJ home. Meanwhile and elsewhere, we meet the man behind the attack on Richard Riley, and he calls himself the Disruptor. He's angry that his plan was thwarted by Spider-Man, and he marches down into his basement to confront Thaxton, a scientist who is working for him, about progress on the Smasher. Because yes, they're responsible for the Smasher too. Thaxton explains that he has given the Smasher new circuits and new strength to better handle Spider-Man, but the Disruptor grabs the Smasher's control unit to control the monster instead. He can't leave anything to chance. But when he gives more power to the Smasher, the monster rages out of control and the Disruptor is forced to press a nullify button to get the Smasher to calm down, unaware that all of this action is foreshadowing. Elsewhere, Jonah is singing the praises of Riley to Norman Osborn and to Robbie, but neither men are biting. Like George Stacy did in the original story, Robbie turns down a chance to interview Riley alongside Jonah, preferring instead to do some reading on the future mayor's background, much to Jonah's annoyance. Elsewhere again, and Spider-Man's hunt for the Smasher is interrupted by some robbers, holding up a Riley fundraiser. Our hero quickly deals with the problem, wrapping all the troublesome people in webbing, before swinging home to call his Aunt May, who has been taken care of by Dr. Octopus despite the villain being in jail. To take his mind off his aunt and her complete trust in a mad scientist, Peter heads with Harry to a Riley youth rally, where he gets to enjoy time with Gwen Stacy and has to turn down a chili dog from MJ because of his stomach ulcer. But before the rally can really begin, Peter's spider sense goes off, and the rally is interrupted by a car driving into the crowd and spraying tear gas at everyone. It's the Disruptor. Swinging to the rescue as Spider-Man, our hero is able to get a few good hits on the Disruptor, but eventually is overcome by too many men and held down while the Disruptor drives away, threatening to return when Spidey is at his weakest. That evening, it is time for Jonah's interview with Richard Riley. Jonah tells Riley that he has the Bugle's full support, and when Robbie's background check comes back clean, which Jonah is sure it will, his victory will be assured. Riley, as much as he pretends otherwise, is concerned about that background check, and someone on his staff thinks to himself about telling his boss about this check. Then, a short time later, we're back with the Disruptor, Thaxton and the Smasher, and the controller has been fixed. Now, the Smasher has a special neuroband which will shock him into obedience. The Disruptor takes the controller and gives the Smasher his first order: to find Robbie Robertson and bring him to the Disruptor, dead or alive. And so, the Smasher smashes into the Daily Bugle to kidnap Robbie, and he would get away with it too if it wasn't for that pesky Spider-Man. While Robbie flees, Spidey holds the Smasher back with webbing before hitting him with a spider tracer, climbing a building and swinging away, hoping that the Smasher will return to the Disruptor's base, which he will eventually do, but in the meantime Peter stops by the campaign trail to to find Harry, MJ and Gwen, who are campaigning for Riley. After Peter kisses Gwen and while Harry is explaining that Riley's headquarters were destroyed, the Smasher shows up. Peter beckons his friends out of the campaign car just in time before the Smasher smashes it. And then Peter sneaks away and follows the Smasher home. And he's starting to suspect who the Disruptor might be. The Smasher arrives back at the Disruptor's base and the villain is gloating when Spider-Man swings in. The Disruptor pushes the remote control to get the Smasher to attack Spider-Man against the device of his scientist Thaxton, and he pushes so hard that the device breaks, and the Smasher is now uncontrollable and very angry. He's angry at the Disruptor for making him a slave, and so he crushes him under rubble. And he's angry at Thaxton for all the experiments, and so he crushes him under rubble too. And then it's just Spider-Man left, the only person standing in the way of the Smasher going on a crime rampage. But Spider-Man has watched the Disruptor control the Smasher and seen how it affected him. And so Spidey leaps on the Smasher's back and karate chops his neck. Just one blow, but a blow that affects the control chip and a blow that knocks the Smasher down. As Riley leads the polls to become the next mayor of New York, Spider-Man unmasks the Disruptor to find that the villain was Richard Riley all along, just like he thought, manufacturing the attacks on himself to get a boost in the polls. But Spider-Man takes the costume off him, so by the time the police arrive with J. Jonah Jameson and Robbie with them, they can mourn the death of a good man and blame Spider-Man for his death, rather than see the true villainous motivation behind Riley's life. Sometimes people need myths and heroes. Peter Parker hears a scream in an alleyway, and so he races to the rescue, slips out of his shoes and makes short work of the muggers attacking a woman without even changing into his costume. But when the woman runs away, as scared of Peter as she was of her muggers, Peter finds Thor just chilling on a fire escape and mocking his pain. But the mockery must cease when something weird happens in the sky, and Thor grabs Peter and spins a protective tornado around them both just in time. Because when the protection goes away, the whole world has turned negative and frozen in time. Well, the whole world except for a troll named Krillic and his army, who seem to be responsible for the world's fate. When Peter, now dressed as Spider-Man, and Thor tried to fight the army, Krillic reveals a dark crystal responsible for the frozen world, and tell Thor that Earth is but a stepping stone to his true goal, Asgard. Then Krillic and his army disappear. Our heroes travel to the Avengers headquarters, and even though the Avengers are frozen along with the rest of the world, they can use the equipment to track Krillic. They find that there are two energy trails, one that goes to Asgard and one to a planetoid. So Thor and Spider-Man split up, each taking a different path. Thor's journey takes him to a planetoid near Jupiter, and he smashes down into the ground and he finds Krillic and his army there. He's able to defeat the army, but seems unable to hurt Krillic. Apparently the Dark Crystal protects him. Krillic explains that he found the crystal under Asgard, and that it explained the mysteries of the universe to him, and now he's going to use it to defeat Odin. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Spider-Man is on an also frozen Asgard, and he also finds Krillic and his army there. He fights them all, webbing up their weapons, and then swings a punch at Krillic, only to pass straight through the villain. But back with Thor, and his Krillic topples over in pain, and Thor uses that as an opportunity to deliver a blow to him. The blow causes Krillic to vanish, and Thor and Spider-Man are suddenly in the same place together. The Watcher turns up to explain the whole situation. Krillic was using the crystal to freeze the space-time continuum, and doing so created a temporal echo that they first found on Earth and later on Asgard when Spider-Man punched it, hurting and defeating the real Krillic. Does that make sense? Probably not, but it's too late to ask any more questions because the Watcher teleports our heroes back to Earth. Spider-Man has a telegram for his Aunt May, so he sneaks into Doc Ock's mansion where she's currently working to deliver it to her. But when he overhears the Doc's men talking about the telegram, he decides to keep it to himself. He pays May a visit still, takes the bus back home, and then opens the telegram to find that it's from Jean-Pierre Rimbaud from Montreal, who has news that he can only share in person. As Peter contemplates how to get to Montreal, he locks up and heads outside to see Harry buy a car. When Peter goes to say hello, Harry doubles over in pain and collapses, and Norman Osborn climbs out of the car and yells at Peter to unhand his son. Peter's confused about Harry collapsing and about Norman jumping down his throat. The only thing he can think is that Norman is remembering the Green Goblin again, and that means remembering his secret identity, which is another reason to get out of New York and visit Montreal. That's made easier when he learns that the Hulk is in Canada, and he convinces J. Jonah Jameson to pay his way in exchange for some photographs. He flies to Montreal and checks up on Jean-Pierre Rimbaud, the sender of the telegram, and is told to come back that evening. So, to kill time, he goes hunting for the Hulk. Using his press pass, he watches General Ross yell angrily about the Hulk, about how they need to take him down, and then soldiers roll out to confront the green monster. Fortunately, Peter is able to grab hold of a departing van filled with journalists and join them, all the way to their destination when the van is picked up and thrown by the Hulk. While the other journalists climb out of the wreckage, Peter changes into Spider-Man and swings hard and kicks the Hulk, sending him tumbling down a cliff. As Spidey sets up a camera, Hulk faces off against an army. "Soldiers with machines," he cries, pulling the ground up as they shoot at him and throwing it at them. Fortunately, Spider-Man's webbing saves their lives. As the Hulk flees, Spider-Man catches General Ross angry and yelling about crushing the Hulk, and he wonders why Ross can hate the Hulk so much. The Hulk lands at a dam and begins to smash it, and then to try to smash Spidey when he intervenes. Worried about the water pressure, Spider-Man swings into a control booth and opens the vents, draining some of the water from the other side, but he's too late, as the Hulk smashes through the dam finally and sends both himself and Spider-Man crashing down into the water, surrounded by debris. As he sinks to the bottom, trapped under concrete, Spider-Man realizes that the Hulk doesn't want to hurt anyone. He just wanted things to work his way, but it might be too late for that. Spider-Man is swinging through New York when he is attacked by the Cat, but she doesn't really want to fight Spider-Man. She just wants to prove herself so that he'd believe her when she asks him for help. She needs help to defeat a woman called Man Killer, who killed an anti-feminist politician in Chicago and defeated the Cat when the Cat tried to intervene. And now the Man Killer is coming to New York, so Spider-Man agrees to help. Meanwhile and elsewhere, the Man Killer smashes through a wall rather than take a door to meet the group that hired her, a bunch of militant feminists. Oh boy. We learn the Man Killer's backstory, how she was a champion skier who challenged a sexist man to a race, and he cut her off on the slopes and they both fell from a cliff. Now the Man Killer is covered in scars and she's just not beautiful enough, and so she hates men and fights them with an exoskeleton, and that makes her 7 times stronger than normal. Her target in New York is a power plant. Back with Spidey and the Cat, and they're nearby that power plant when a futuristic car flies up and battering rams itself into the plant. And so they're there to stop the Man Killer, with the Cat fighting her and Spider-Man webbing up the militants. But in all the chaos, the Man Killer gets away, and the man in charge of the plant reveals that she has taken radioactive material with her and a generator prototype, things that no one was supposed to know about. Spider-Man swings out into the city on the hunt for the Man Killer while the Cat stays with the militant group. After hours pass, Spidey finds his quarry, but is too slow to avoid her punches. But he gets back up. When she knocks him down again, he gets back up again, explaining that a guy's only helpless when he gives in, and Spider-Man won't give in. Then he hits her back. As both hero and villain sway from their respective punches, the Cat arrives and reveals to the Man Killer that she's actually been working with men all along, that she has stolen this equipment for AIM, who were funding the militant feminists. And the idea of working for a man is such a shock to the Man Killer that she goes into a catatonic state, and Spider-Man and the Cat are able to recover the generator and save the day. It's New Year's Eve and everyone in the Fantastic Four is miserable. Sue has left Reed and taken their baby, and Johnny has broken up with Crystal, and so the only two people still in love are Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters. Just before the clock strikes midnight, the super strong Thundra, a new member of the Frightful Four, stops the hands from ticking and challenges the Thing to a fight in 3 days. She wants to prove that she's stronger than the strongest man. When Johnny Storm flies up to stop her, she uses the clock's hands to create a fan, putting out his flame. Then, to give the Thing motivation to show up at the fight, Thundra kidnaps Alicia and flies away on a hover disc. The whole country is excited for the fight, including the Avengers, Spider-Man and the Hulk. And after 3 days, Thundra and the Thing meet to do battle in a baseball stadium. But the Thing underestimates his opponent's strength, and Thundra lifts him up and throws him out of the stadium, following on her hover disc. The fight continues outside of the stadium, with Thundra telling the Thing to concede and the Thing refusing. But Ben Grimm is losing, and one more strike may kill him. And so Reed Richards shoots Ben with a massive gun that Reed brought with him, turning the Thing back into the human Ben Grimm, just long enough for Thundra to cry that he's cheating and leave. She can't fight a normal weakling man. She does keep her promise and free Alicia though, so the Fantastic Four have won this battle and they leave satisfied. Spider-Man is drowning, trapped under a concrete block under the water, but is saved from drowning thanks to the Hulk's rage, as the Hulk throws the concrete block out of the river with our hero attached. Then, the Hulk spreads his arms wide, causing a tidal wave to take out the nearby army looking to take the Hulk down, and then the Green Giant leaves, safe in the knowledge that they cannot give chase. And since Spider-Man has pictures already, he hitches a helicopter ride back and deals with other issues. First, as Peter Parker, he calls Gwen Stacy to check on Harry, who collapsed last issue. Gwen tells him to hurry home, that Harry has still been doing drugs and is flashing back to a bad trip from a few months ago. Before Peter can blame himself for his friend's issues, he spots someone tailing him, so he ducks away into an alley and deals with the problem as Spider-Man. After hanging the man upside down and almost dropping him, he learns that the man has been tailing Peter at the request of Doc Ock. But before he can get any more information, General Ross turns up with the whole army, accusing Spider-Man of working with the Hulk. So Spider-Man smashes the General's spotlights and runs, leaving his stalker hanging in the alleyway. Back as Peter, he visits the office of Monsieur Rimbaud to learn nothing really, only that the telegram was important, but that Mr. Rimbaud didn't leave any notes about why. But his secretary explains that Peter can meet him, that he'll be at the Old Expo 67 fairgrounds. So Peter travels in a taxi with her, unaware that he's being followed, and then surprised to see the Hulk standing in the road. The Hulk, blinded by headlights, pulls the road up and overturns the taxi, knocking the driver and the secretary out. There's only one thing for Peter to do: stop the Hulk. As Spider-Man, he fires webs at the Hulk and keeps him angry. Specifically, he keeps the Hulk's anger directed at him and away from others. The Hulk pulls apart exhibitions to get at Spider-Man and is eventually able to grab our hero's legs and throw him through a pillar. But as the Hulk approaches Spider-Man to finish the job, he's interrupted by the army, shooting at him from helicopters, and the Hulk runs away. Spider-Man uses the distraction to change back to Peter Parker and emerge from the rubble to find Monsieur Rimbaud with his secretary. As Rimbaud attempts to finally tell Peter the message that he had for Aunt May, he is shot and killed by the man that was tailing Peter earlier, and so the message remains forever unsaid. And so Peter returns home to New York, the mystery unresolved and with dark tragedy on the horizon. There's an earthquake in New York, and the Avengers headquarters is at the centre of it. When Iron Man shows up to investigate, he finds that he cannot get inside the building, that there's some kind of force field around it. And elsewhere, Peter Parker watches Iron Man's attempts on the television, but when Harry is rude to him about how loud the television is, Peter decides to suit up as Spidey and go and help his fellow hero. When Spider-Man arrives at the Avengers HQ and shares some banter with Iron Man, a portal opens up in the side of the force field and the two heroes do what they do best: blindly leap inside. They find themselves in some kind of limbo, with spaceships battling each other overhead. When Iron Man flies up to investigate, one of the ships fires out a beam that immobilizes him, keeps him held while the ship lands. But inside is not an enemy, but someone calling himself Zarrko the Tomorrow Man. Zarrko explains that he was just stopping Iron Man from attacking his ship, and then explains that they have a mutual enemy, the Invader, who has started a time war, attacked the 23rd century, and has now captured the Avengers. And Zarrko needs Iron Man and Spider-Man's help. Zarrko drops our heroes off at the Invader's fortress, and while Spider-Man dispatches the guards on top, Iron Man uses his laser blasts to cut open an entrance for them to use. Inside, Spider-Man webs up some more guards who fly around on hoverbikes before Iron Man is hit by a giant metallic fist, knocking his suit out of action. The fist belongs to a giant metallic robot who is upset that Iron Man is not pure robot, but a cyborg instead. But before the big robot can kill Iron Man for the crime of being partly human, Spidey swings up, webs the robot's head up and smashes him to the ground. Spider-Man helps Iron Man into the Invader's chamber and we learn his identity. It's Kang the Conqueror, and he has kidnapped the Avengers. Kang zaps our two heroes, paralyzing them, telling them that they'll soon be slaves in his army. But Kang finds himself facing a gun, aimed by Zarrko the Tomorrow Man, who is actually a traitor man. Zarrko has used Spidey and Iron Man to get into the fortress and now plans to not defeat Kang, but to use Kang's army and resources to rule over time himself, and Spider-Man can't move to stop him. Spider-Man recovers on the ground as Zarrko holds Kang at gunpoint and explains his plan. He's sending 3 time bombs back to the modern day that will slowly reverse time all around them back to the Stone Age, leaving Iron Man on the ground since the earlier blast from Kang has fried his suit. Spidey sneaks away and finds a time machine. As Spidey sends himself back to the present day, Kang gets the upper hand on Zarrko, blasting him, but noticing someone entering through the airlock, someone that surprises him. But we'll have to wait until next issue to find out who that is. Spider-Man arrives back in 1973, the present day, in the Baxter Building. Since everyone else is elsewhere, Spidey explains the situation to Johnny Storm, and the two of them team up once more to stop 3 time bombs. The torch goes to Japan, and Spidey goes to South America. When he arrives in Japan, the torch discovers the location of the time bomb thanks to a train transforming before his eyes into an old-timey steam engine. As the bomb's radiation spreads wider, cars turn to carts and oxen, and skyscrapers turn to old buildings. Using his flames to create an infrared heat screen, the torch is able to track down the bomb to one specific building. Outside the building, and driven mad by the radiation, a Japanese soldier shoots at him, and then turns into a samurai and tries to slice him open with a sword. But even without his powers, Johnny can handle this foe, and then he reaches the time bomb, and the radiation begins to affect him. He's losing his mind. Meanwhile and elsewhere, and after hitching a ride on a plane, Spider-Man uses his spider sense to find the bomb in South America, finding it at the docks. He's able to take care of everyone who tries to stop him, but when he reaches the bomb he loses control, absorbed by the bomb's radiation. But before Spidey is lost completely, the Human Torch destroys the bomb with fire, and explains that he did the same with his bomb. He also starts to talk about how familiar the radiation was, before Spidey hurries him on. With one more device to find, they both steal an old-timey plane that reverts back to a modern plane as they take off, although it also turns back old-fashioned as they approach Greece and they're forced to improvise. They're met by soldiers, driven mad by the radiation, but a panel later, they're webbed up, and the torch is ready to destroy the time bomb, until Spider-Man stops him. If they destroy the last device, they'll have no clue how to defeat Zarrko and Kang. Instead, they disable the device, and Torch remembers why the radiation was familiar. It feels the same as the force that surrounds the Great Refuge, home of the Inhumans. But since his girlfriend lives there, the Human Torch leaves Spider-Man to team up with the Inhumans by himself. Next issue. Harry Osborn is sick in bed. Spider-Man, listening in at the window, hears the doctor say to MJ and Gwen that it's due to an LSD trip. Perhaps if he hadn't been so depressed, the drugs wouldn't have hit him so hard. But when Spidey changes into Peter and tries to see his friend, Norman Osborn stops him. Norman Osborn blames Peter for everything that has happened to Harry. It's all Peter's fault, and he doesn't want to see Peter or Gwen or MJ in his home again, and so they all leave, feeling sorry for Harry, who has been pampered his whole life but still ended up desperate enough to take drugs. A few hours later, Peter Parker visits the Bugle, but he feels unwell. He must have picked something up when he was in Canada. Jonah yells at him for being sick in the office, thinks that he'll make the whole staff sick, and Peter is kicked out of another place in this issue, but not before he sells some photographs of the Hulk fighting Spider-Man. And so Peter heads home, looking forward to some time with Gwen. It'll be nice just to talk. But meanwhile and elsewhere, Norman Osborn is worried about his son and worried about his failing business. His enemies are everywhere, he thinks, and they're trying to ruin him and corrupt his son. Then, he imagines Spider-Man sitting on his desk, the source of all pain in his life, come to gloat, and he lashes out in anger. He won't let Spider-Man escape, not again. And then his mind snaps, and all of the memories of the Green Goblin come flooding back, and he races out of his mansion to his secret hideaway, and he dons his villainous persona once more, and then he flies to the window of one Gwen Stacy. And so, when Peter arrives home feeling dizzy from his illness, he finds Gwen's handbag, one that he bought her for Christmas, and a pumpkin bomb. And he knows in that moment that the Green Goblin has returned. He leaps out of the window in search of Gwen, swinging across the city until he spots the Goblin on top of the George Washington Bridge, which looks an awful lot like the Brooklyn Bridge. As he approaches, the Green Goblin taunts him, yelling his secret identity out in public. And despite feeling unwell, Spider-Man doesn't hesitate. He needs to get Gwen out of there, and he can deal with the Goblin later. So he races up the bridge, webs out at the Goblin's glider, pulls the villain towards him, and gives everything he has to knock the Goblin down and towards the water. With the Goblin defeated, Spider-Man reaches Gwen at the top of the bridge, who is in a state of shock. He doesn't notice that the Green Goblin never hit the water, that he was able to command his glider to save him, until it is too late, and the Goblin knocks Gwen Stacy off the bridge. As she falls to the water below, Spider-Man cries out and fires his webbing that catches her ankle and stops her fall. He doesn't notice how abrupt the stop is, and he doesn't hear the small snap of her neck. He just pulls her back to safety, thankful for his spider powers and making jokes. But when she's back on top of the bridge, she doesn't react. She doesn't wake up. And Spider-Man can't accept the truth. She can't be dead. He saved her. She can't be dead. He doesn't want her to be dead. Why can't she see? Why can't she see that he saved her? He saved her. His moment of grief is broken by a taunt from the sky. The Green Goblin telling him that she was dead before his webbing even reached her. That his death, Spider-Man's death, will come even quicker. But with Gwen lying dead in his arms, Spider-Man vows that it is the Goblin who will pay. For killing the woman that he loves, the Green Goblin is going to die. Thanks for watching, and thanks to my patrons listed here for supporting the channel. Next time we get to the end of 1973, including the Goblin's last stand. If you want to know when that happens, hit the bell and YouTube will probably notify you, or follow me for free on Patreon, where you can get the videos ad-free too.